It's the beginning of April, and in the south of England here, that means the wild garlic, ramsons or bear leek, is in prime condition for picking. So I've been out today and picked a load from one of my favourite local spots, and I'm going to put this in the dehydrator and see what happens. First thing to do is to remove foreign bodies, so we've only got the wild garlic, and give it a good thorough wash. I've got some flowers in here as well from the wild garlic, not a problem, those are also edible. But I am going to pick out anything that's not wild garlic. Also maybe anything that doesn't look quite so nice. So I'll take small bunches at a time because that makes it easier to sort through, make sure we're looking at the right thing. I'm just going to give that a really good rinse in clear water. Make sure all any adhering dirt or debris is washed off. And then I'll just put that there to drain for the moment. I will have one more opportunity to sift through this for things that are not garlic when I load it into the dehydrator. That's something I definitely don't want to eat. That's ivy. Now the job of sorting out foreign bodies and non-garlic plants was made a bit easier by the fact that I was quite judicious when I picked this. I picked it from spots where it was growing thickly, not many other things were growing with it, and I was reasonably careful about what I was picking, but it's always worth having another little sort through when you get home. So that's one lot of garlic, and that's going to sit there and dry out now, or at least drain a little bit. Now I've got another type of garlic from the garden because we've got three-cornered leek growing in my garden as a weed. Now picking this three-cornered leek, which is the white flowers you can see at the back here, need to be super careful here because we've got lots and lots of other quite similar things growing in amongst them. For example, daffodils here. Flowers are just going over on those daffodils, but daffodil leaves are poisonous. Then we've also got bluebells, and again bluebell leaves are poisonous. In amongst there we had snowdrops as well, and the leaves are still green. Snowdrops are poisonous. Tulips, I don't think they are poisonous, but obviously I wouldn't mistake them because they're broader leaves anyway, so I need to be super careful. And then similarly in some places we've got white bluebells, which are superficially very similar to the three-cornered leek, so the opportunity for fatal error is available in this garden, so I need to be extra careful. This here, by the way, is ramsons. I didn't think we still had that in the garden. I thought we'd eradicated that one because again it's a very invasive weed. Anyway, to mitigate the potential risk, I'm going to pick the three-cornered leek from places where I can see it's growing really thickly, and I'm going to pick it one stem at a time so that I can examine it and make sure I'm picking the right thing. Fortunately, that isn't too difficult because, as the name suggests, three-cornered leek has a triangular stem and the leaves are kind of triangular in cross-section as well. So it is possible to be quite safe about this. I just need to be careful is all. And so by careful, here's what I mean actually, what I can do. So this is definitely three-cornered leek. You can tell from the flowers, you can tell from the triangular cross-section of the stem. So what I can actually do is follow that flowering stem down and pull the whole bunch there. So I've got a couple of leaves and a flower stalk. But I can be very confident that that's all three-cornered leek. And I'll just do the same with all of these. So I will find a flower stem, follow it down to the bottom of the plant, making sure, see there's a bunch of these thinner leaves here are probably got some snowdrops in amongst them. So I will shake off any loose bits. Now if you were picking this from somewhere else where this is the only plant growing, it wouldn't be such an issue. But here it is, so I'm going to be really careful. And then for three-cornered leeks, which you can see for some of them we've pulled up the bulbs, so I will trim those off and make sure those don't go back into the compost. A bit of a losing battle in this garden, but you might as well fight it. Now these do tend to trap a little bit of dirt in amongst the bunch of stems there, so I might just need to pull those apart Make sure we've got all of the dirt out from inside of there. Rinse them off, pull off any unpleasant looking leaves, and just save the green bits. And then the same process with all of this here. So I'm not sure how successful this is going to be, because herbs sort of divide into two broad categories. Woody herbs like sage, rosemary, thyme, bay leaves tend to dry really well. Leafy or wet herbs like chives, basil, parsley don't seem to do quite so well. They do dry, but what you end up with is something that's very, very poor in flavour. So it's possible that what I'm going to end up with here is kind of garlic scented hay. We will just have to wait and see, I suppose. I think it's worth a try anyway. I am of course expecting that the drying process will pretty much destroy any beneficial nutritional content for this. So the idea here is really to try to create something that's usable as a culinary herb for its flavour, rather than any specific nutritional benefits. I think for the nutritional benefits you'd want to eat this raw, or at least fresh. Interestingly, I understand that the seeds of this plant are distributed by ants. So once you get it in an area, it's very, very difficult to control, because it will spread very rapidly with the assistance of insects. Now, I don't know whether people think perhaps I labour the potential mishaps of foraging something that's poisonous a bit too much, but I do think it's kind of important to be really, really clear about the potential risks of foraging. If you were just to go and grab a random mushroom and a random green leaf, you're more likely to die from the random green leaf than you are from the random mushroom. I mean, it's not a good idea to do either of those things, but there are proportionally more toxic green plants than there are toxic mushrooms as a percentage of the total. And so I just think it's very important to be sure about what you're picking, because being poisoned to death will kind of disrupt any plans you might have had for the afternoon. Okay, that's most of my three-cornered leeks done. And now all I'm going to do is take bunches of that garlic and, well, just to make them a little bit more manageable, I'm just going to chop them in half. I'm not going to cut them too finely, or else they'll just fall through the holes when they dry. And this is one of the trays for the dehydrator, so I'm just going to put them straight onto here, but I think I might let them drain a little bit longer, just to lose some of their water. Always shake some of the water off them like this, but the dehydrator will deal with that fairly quickly. In fact, one of the ways I found the easiest way to dry the dehydrated trays after washing them is to put them in the dehydrator, because drying is what it does. I just realised I've got a hole in the middle of that tray, so let's just remedy that. Okay, got to keep that central hole clear. Seagulls have come inland. That means storms at the coast, or at least when I hear that sound here, that's what that means. And then, exactly as before, I'm just going to chop up these three-cornered leeks, and this gives me another opportunity to sift through, remove any bits that I don't like the look of, double check for anything that might be a foreign invader, that might be not the thing we want to eat, and then just chop them up and arrange them on the trays as before. When this is dry, I will chop it again into little pieces that can be shaken onto or into a recipe. When it's dry, assuming it is indeed edible at all, this isn't going to be the kind of thing you're going to want to shake directly onto something like a pizza. It's more likely something you're going to want to throw into a soup at the start of cooking. So it has a chance to rehydrate, and also has a chance to infuse its flavour, because I think the flavour is going to be somewhat muted. Probably a better way to preserve the actual flavour of wild garlic like this is to pickle it. And if you're interested in seeing that, I've got a video where I did a lacto ferment with some of the ramsons, and it was really good. So that will be in this card and in the video description if you're interested. So we've got all the dehydrator trays stacked and ready to go here, except are they ready to go? It occurs to me that these leaves might actually dehydrate better and faster and more effectively if I freeze them. Freezing will burst open the cells in some of the thicker parts of the plant, and hopefully that will enable the moisture to come out quicker, and a quicker dry means we retain more flavour, in theory. This is not freeze drying, and I don't have the facility to do freeze drying because you need a vacuum chamber for that. But I think I'll give this a try. I'm going to freeze this in the trays overnight, and then we'll dehydrate them straight from frozen in the morning. Here's the garlic, and it is frozen now. I'm still not sure this is the right thing to do. I am kind of making this up as I go along, but a lot of vegetables, before you dry them, you're supposed to blanch them briefly in boiling water. My intuition is that freezing them will do a similar thing. It will break apart some of the structure. It'll allow the water to come out. Because when you freeze greens like this, when they thaw, they will tend to wilt. And that's actually what I want here. The dehydrator is going to go on at 40 degrees Celsius for 15 hours. The smell in here, by the way, is powerfully garlic, which means that some of the volatile, some of that garlic aroma obviously is getting driven off of here, and we're losing it, so that's unfortunate, but I did expect that. Okay, this ran for about a total of 22 hours, and it's still not dry, or at least not completely. There are places where it's a little bit rustly. Let's have a look further down. So further down in the stack, some of this is nearly dry, but it's still very sticky in places. And then the bottom layer, well, again, there are dryish bits. So what I'm going to do now is run this for another half hour just to drive off any surface moisture because it's stopped for a while. And then I'm going to pick out the bits that are dry and rescue them. I'm not going to expend any more energy trying to dry this because it's just a waste. This dehydrator is not too energy hungry, and the heat coming out of here is actually helping to warm the house as well as making the whole house smell of garlic. But I think probably there's enough material here to figure out whether this is even worth doing. My gut feeling right now is it's not. Anyway, so we'll run this for half an hour, then we'll rescue what we can. Right, what I'm going to do now is just put on a tray here to catch any bits that fall through, and I'm going to sift through this and pick out the really crackly bits. Some of them are crisp, some of them are quite sticky still, and that will not keep. They are sticky though, because they feel kind of sugary. Really, I mean, it shouldn't be a surprise to us because onions are full of sugar and these are essentially onions. But I am going to taste a little bit of this stem. It's tough as shoelaces. I'm going to have a little chew on a piece of this stem and see how sweet that tastes. Interestingly, really sweet. Like sweet corn level of sweet, that is. That's interesting. Well, I don't think you need to watch me sifting through these garlic leaves here, so I think what I'll do is I'm just going to cut to the other bit, which is of course the three-cornered leek. And again, some of this is dried okay, so we have got dry brittle pieces. The thicker stemmy parts haven't, so it's only really the leafy bits that have dried. And again, I'm going to give this a little taste, so I'm going to taste a piece of this stemmy part, which is gone soft and sticky. That's got more flavour in it, but then that hasn't dried properly. Actually, that tastes okay. Yeah, that's got some good flavour. It's almost like got a buttery flavour to it, interestingly. Let's taste a bit of the ramsons as well. Slightly bitter. Three-cornered leek, however, distinctively, strangely buttery flavour to it. Definitely some garlic aroma preserved here. So what I'm going to do is just carry on processing this, and then we'll see what the yield looks like for the two different things. So the yield at the end of this is a bit better than I thought, actually. So that much of the ramsons, I've only kept the crispy bits. I haven't kept any of the kind of anything that's still slightly soft. And this much, about the same amount really, of the three-cornered leek, maybe a little bit more there, and more of the flowers on these because those were open and they've dried better. Plus an enormous mess, which I will now have to tidy up. This is the amount that didn't dry, and it's just wet stems. It's mostly the thicker stems, and that shouldn't be a surprise to anyone. The stems, I guess the moisture just can't get out of them enough. I could have cut that into shorter sections, but then we run the risk of it falling through the holes in the dehydrator or blowing around when it gets completely dry. Never mind though, because we have got enough material here to evaluate this as a dried herb. So I have my two varieties of dried garlic here, Ramson's and three-cornered leek. Ramson's smells sort of slightly pickly actually, sort of pickly garlicky. Three-cornered leek smells meadowy, grassy. So I'm going to taste test these today, and I thought instant mashed potato might be the way to do that. Why instant mashed potato and not something else? Well, it's a known quantity. It's a fairly neutral thing, and it's a known quantity. I know what this tastes like, and so I will be able to hopefully judge the effect of the garlic. Plus, obviously, you make it with hot water, so that will rehydrate the garlic. So that's the reasoning for that. So I'm going to divide one of these packs in half and make two half portions with each of these garlics. Even with those scales I use for the resin, this stuff is far too light to weigh, so I'm going to have to eyeball that. And I will chop it up into little pieces, and we'll have 2 pots of garlic. I'll do that first. Should be 55 grams of mashed potato powder in each one. Come on. Got to work reasonably fast now. I want 250 ml of water in each one. And I'll use the small jug because it's got better graduations for measuring that quantity. That's it, 250 ml in each one. Ramson's on the right, three-cornered leek on the left. Ramson's right, leek left, should be easy enough to remember, shouldn't it? A chunk of butter, I'm not going to weigh that, I'm just going to, the approximate same amount of butter in each. They both smell garlicky, oniony now, in different ways. So potatoes into that, and potatoes into there. I always find it amazing how quickly this stuff actually stiffens up and becomes something like mashed potato. So we've got kind of kind of forbidden champ here. This is about the least authentic version of Irish champ that you could possibly imagine. Speaking of Irish champ, my friend Babatunde in Nigeria had a go at making it, which was quite a challenge for him, which is essentially mashed potatoes and milk and butter and spring onions. Bit of a challenge for him in Nigeria just because of availability of ingredients. And so, yeah, have a look at his video. I'll put a link in the description and in that card. Right, okay. Well, there it is. Kind of looks quite similar now. Ramson's on the right, leek's on the left. I'm just going to let that stand for a little bit and then we'll give it a taste. It does seem to have rehydrated okay. Taste testing time for my dried, well, my reconstituted dried wild garlic. So Ramson's on the right, three-cornered leek on the left. Right, so a more kind of acidic and garlicky, oniony freshness to that, and still kind of this grassy, meadowy smell on the three-cornered leeks. But it's the taste that matters, isn't it? So I'll try the Ramsons first. The taste is very, very faintly of garlic and very, very faintly of kind of onions. It's a shadow of its former self. But there is a grassy taste there, like dried grass. Don't ask me how I know the flavour of dried grass. The flavour does come out more as I'm dwelling on it, so I think probably a longer cooking time in a soup or something might be good. We'll perhaps do that in another video. I'm going to shut the window because there's a truck out there. Okay, and the three-cornered leek. Not as nice. And I thought that one was not really all that nice, but this is kind of almost unpleasantly grassy. Just to be fair, I'll give it another taste. Yeah, the three-cornered leek has almost no onion flavour at all. It's just green, grassy vegetation. The Ramsons, yeah, the Ramsons definitely has worked and has retained some of its garlic aroma, although not very much. but that's actually reasonably pleasant to eat. I think it could have done with being cut smaller. The pieces themselves are still quite tough where it's a vegetable that's been dried. So the Ramsons one is okay. The three-cornered leek, barely edible. It's just instant mash with bits of hay in it. I suppose the thing to do here is evaluate whether a bit of pepper can save it. A bit of pepper and a bit of nutmeg. Is that going to save it? We'll try this one first. Yeah, that's salvaged it, but obviously all I can really taste now in there is the pepper and the nutmeg. The three-cornered leek is really just a texture in there now. Whereas this one, well, let's try this one. Yeah, the garlic is still present in that one. So there we go. I think that just kind of confirmed my suspicions of what happens when you try to dry leafy wild garlic in the dehydrator, but I think it was interesting to test it out anyway. I'm going to say that the best way to preserve this is to pickle it. So that lacto-fermented garlic pickle that I did last year, I think it was last year, or was it the year before? That was superb, and that retained a really, really powerful flavour that this has somehow lost along the way. So I hope that was interesting. This is not going to be the last thing I do with wild garlic this year, because there's a lot of it about. It's really good, especially in my garden. I've got the three-cornered leeks, tons of them. I think I'll try pickling those this year, and we'll do something else with ramsons, but I think we'll use them fresh. So I think I'm going to keep the dried ramsons, and I'll use that in a soup or something at some point in the future. The dried three-cornered leek, I think, is going to go in the compost. So I hope that's been an interesting experiment, even though it's kind of futile. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you again soon.